starting day 2 of our World Energy Conference with our keynote speaker, Dr. Willem Lammers from Switzerland. Dr. Willem, would you like to unmute?
Yes, here I am.
Lovely. So, firstly, before I introduce you officially, can I thank you for your patience? Because as like Jackie that's joining us, we were all supposed to meet in the physical in Manchester several years ago. And I'm so glad that you've hung in there with us, because I'm passionate about what you do and that you are here with us to share what you do. So that's a huge thank you. So Dr. Willem Lammers is a chartered clinical and social psychologist, a psychotherapist, and a consultant to people and organisations. He is certified as a teaching and supervising transactional analysis. In his training practice and teachings, he spent many years in the interface of body, mind and spirit in systems like transactional analysis, NLP, the Reconnection, the Monroe Institute and energy psychology. Willem actually shared with us just this morning that he opened up the first European Psychology Conference in 2001, Willem.
That's long ago.
It is. And everybody still talks about it today. So that is with all due credit to you, sir. Willem runs a private practice for psychotherapy, supervision and coaching. His teaching activities are taking him to many countries in Europe and overseas. He is the author of 6 books and numerous articles in the field. He will be speaking today on restoring the flow of frozen energy, logosynthesis and the resolution of trauma and fear. And he has very generously gifted all of you a PDF book from around logosynthesis. So welcome and thank you, Willem.
Thank you, Mary, for these nice words. I realized that the number of books has increased with 3 since the pandemic. So I wasn't allowed to travel and not able to travel, so I wrote books. That's not so important, so I'm going to take my presentation. I'm going to talk with you about logosynthesis and restoring the flow of frozen energy. You introduced me, so I don't need to do that, I'm glad. So I'll share my screen here and start. So here's my program, and it has 4 aspects or main aspects, and you will realize or recognize some of it, and some of it will be new. It depends on the time we have. If I can give a demonstration, I have found one of my colleagues who wants to address an issue with the help of my logosynthesis basic procedure, and then we have some closing remarks. So I'll start with energy, and energy means for me that you are more than your body and mind. You are essence, you are a higher frequency, a higher self. So energy can be physical energy, it can be subtle energy, and we can talk about healing and development with the help of energy. So what's energy? I've been looking for quite a while, what is energy? Because it's very difficult to grasp. We talk about it all the time. It's the potential to cause something to happen. And the most current way of thinking about energy is, especially in these days of gas and electricity, which are maybe threatened in their delivery, Energy accelerates objects. So if I drive my car, I can, with the help of my battery, accelerate the object. It heats a substance or a room. It allows an electrical current to flow. It emits electromagnetic waves, and that's why we are all able to see and hear each other here today. And plants, animals, and humans need physical energy to live. That's, let's say, the common idea of what energy is. But energy is more. Energy is often understood as physical, as I mentioned, but there are also other manifestations of energy. So first, there is matter as a completely static form, as it looks on the quantum level. It's not static, and even matter can move, as we saw yesterday in the presentation. Matter, energy can be information. So if I talk to you, this information in my speech is transmitted through energy, and it can be consciousness and it can be intention. So in quantum physics, you can't take these terms apart. They're a little bit all the same, so it's not so bad to talk about these phenomena as energy as a whole, as a, let's say, encompassing concept. So one step more, energy psychology and energy medicine assume a subtle form of energy, and that's different because this type of energy is said to be coherent and it's goal-oriented. So if you have subtle energy, you can make something happen, and it doesn't just disappear, or you can focus it, and if you focus it, something is intentionally directed into existence. And this subtle energy has a higher frequency than matter, physical energy, and information. And at its highest frequency, and I don't know if you were aware of David Hawkins' work with a frequency level of 0 to 1,000, at the highest frequency, it's the origin of creation. And that's a fascinating phenomenon. And it's very important that we are aware of this energy, and maybe we can also use it. So, I have to go back. This was. So this energy concept as this subtle energy is not new. It's deeply rooted in the history of humanity. Every single culture has to find form. So almost every culture has assumed the idea of a life energy that allows for healing, development, and creation. And it's what we are using. The mainstream science of our Western world is an exception. It has never before happened in history that a whole culture excludes this form of energy and limits itself to the idea of biology and psychology. Well, of course, we have religious ideas in which this energy exists, but the mainstream in our daily life is still determined by this reductionist view. So if you look back in history for a few minutes, then we know that Aristotle and Zeno already knew this concept of a growing force in existence, in our nature. It causes organisms to develop higher forms, it lets an embryo grow to become an adult, and it guides healthy people in striving after their ideals or in going for their mission, as I call it in Logosynthesis. So in different cultures, this manifesting creative energy carries different names. So the Egyptians say Ka, the Greeks said Physis, the Hebrew peoples said Ruah, in India is Prana, in China is Chi, and in Western culture we have Bergson, a philosopher who called it élan vital. And it's very interesting. In science, it's still there. It's hidden. It's called evolution. And if you ask scientists why is there an evolution, they don't have an answer. They might come up with some physical biology, but the concept of evolution in itself is this hidden, what we call essence. I chose the form essence, or the term essence. It's derived from Ali Hamid Almas, who's a Sufi master and a psychoanalyst. And for me, it's a useful term because it's a neutral term. Everybody understands what it is without being bound in a school or a religious system. So if you think about this essence, when you're working in healing, development of creation, the energy of your essence needs to flow. And this energy is active in biology, it keeps you alive, it's active in psychology, it makes you creative, and there is more. So if we think about life energy in science, go back to history a little bit, then biology and psychology tend to take a skeptical, materialist stance towards this concept of subtle energy. And they often openly deny that there is more to life than matter. I have this beautiful quote from 1860 by Rudolf Virchow, who was a very important person in developing ideas about the cell. And here he is, and it's, let's say, it could have been said yesterday or tomorrow. Medical science has recently defined its approach as mechanical, the goal being to realize a physics of organisms. Medicine has proved that life is merely an expression of a sum of phenomena, with every single phenomenon based on known physical laws. And these were the physical laws of 1860, and I don't even know if they had the periodic table of elements at that moment. Maybe if you look at quantum physics nowadays, there might be more, so there might be a connection to what's going on. And the latest research in neuropsychology and neurology shows that there are quantum effects in the brain going on, but often the most fundamental thoughts are still rooted in this kind of thinking from the 19th century. Then Freud, the old master, he considered an inherent creative power in nature as a pleasant illusion. Okay, I'm very happy with that illusion, living in that illusion. There is an inherent creative power in nature. So I'm also coming from transactional analysis, so that's my original discipline. And I like this quote from Eric Berne, and then you don't have to discuss it. And he said, he called it physis, life energy. Perhaps physis doesn't exist at all, but in spite of our ability to be definite about the subject, there are so many things which happen as if there were such a force that it's easier to understand human beings if we suppose that physis does exist. He wrote this in 1947, so that was already, let's say, a quite challenging statement at that time. And I hope if you work with people who don't believe that there is something more than this, this is a pretty pragmatic stance to go with it. And then we have Max Planck, which I really like. This is a fantastic quote. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds the most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind, and this mind is the origin of all matter. I love this quote because we can see, let's say, our world in daily life, and behind what keeps this world alive, there is a conscience conscious and intelligent mind, and there's a very big mind. So in most cultures in history, this force comes from the spiritual realm. It's non-local, it's divine, it's associated with gods, the gods, a higher power, and it can be activated by priests, prophets, and healers. So in our work, this kind of energy thinking, these concepts help us to understand pathology and healing. We can assess energy patterns and we can change energy patterns. So if you don't believe in energy as a subtle power or force, it becomes very difficult to explain what happens in our work. So what I've been doing in the last 17 years is to develop a concept how I can understand energy and how I can transform this understanding in healing modalities. I'm not the only one. If you think about energy in this frame of reference, so is it our energy is patterned as a coherent system. So we have 75 billion cells, and these all move together in a frequency, at a very high frequency, in a very different interaction. And each cell, we have 100,000 chemical reactions a second. Okay, that's big. You can't understand that. And it's okay you don't understand because your mind is really too small for that. So we know that life events influence this energy system, physical, mental, emotional. We talk a lot about trauma. We heard yet a lot of it yesterday. Physical and emotional distress can disturb your energy system. I focus here on trauma and fear, but of course there's much more to say about it. We can activate your energy system in a specific way to heal these disturbances. And that's the field of energy medicine and energy psychology. So what are people doing who use the energy system to stimulate and readjust a person in finding their way in life? So we have specific exercises like in Donna Eden's work. You can tap on a series of acupuncture points with EFT and TFT, so Gary Craig's and Roger Callahan's work. And you can also adopt a specific posture with the simultaneous stimulation of acupuncture points. That's what Tapas Fleming is doing. So she has this very complex hand position. And we have John Diepold work on heart-assisted therapy, where he uses the hands to hold the heart and at the same time access the issue you want to work on. In Logosynthesis work, we do something different. You speak specific sentences to activate your energy system and to restore the flow of life energy. That goes beyond sentences to describe reality, to make a judgment, to go for a logic explanation. This is something different. This is direct activation of essence in the service of your healing and development. So what do you see in these energy treatments? Your thoughts, emotions, and behavior, they move in a healthy direction. The stress is reduced, the positive changes remains for everything that you have treated, memories, fantasies, beliefs. And there are many empirical studies. David Feinstein and Dawson Church did a very good job in organizing all this information. And so we have energy and it works. And this is my chapter about energy. Now we move to logosynthesis. So this is my plan for logosynthesis. Wait a minute. I have two experiments, which I invite you to participate in. I'll talk about the energy concept in logosynthesis, about the model, Then we go to trauma and fear and how we can understand trauma and fear in this context of logosynthesis. So I started with a little first experiment, and I invite you to think of a person you like or love, and a person who's not near you in the same room with you now. So you must sure be able to think about someone who you love. And I ask you to imagine that that person is present in your room now, in the space around you. And now explore the presence of this person in the space around you. So you're in the middle, and around you somewhere is this person. So where do you perceive the presence of that person in the space around you? Is this person at your left, at your right? Is the person above you, below you? And also, how far away? So you locate this person in your personal space, in the space around you, in the room. Or if you say, maybe you're sitting outside in another part of the world, we wouldn't do it here. So then the question is, how do you perceive the presence of that person in your space? So do you have an image of this person? Do you hear her voice or his voice? Or do you just sense that the person is there in a certain direction, behind you, below you, above you? And then the fact is, this person you like or love is not there. What you do is you perceive an imaginary sensory representation in space: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory, from NLP borrowed. So, in fact, if you look at it from an energy perspective, this imaginary sensory representation is a frozen energy pattern in your personal space. That's very nice in this case. So you think of this loving person, and that energy pattern will trigger reactions in the forms of emotions, thoughts, and physical sensations, because representations lead to reactions. Stimulus, response, very old psychology. So here comes the next question. So how do you react to the presence of this pleasant person in the space around you? What do you think in reaction to this presence? What do you feel, which emotions, and which body sensations? So you might relax, you might be moved, you might think, oh, I love you. And energy patterns in your personal space lead to unconscious automatic reaction. That's Pavlov, classical condition. I'm trained as a psychologist, and this was one of the first things I learned. So energy patterns activate other energy patterns. So now we do another experiment, and that's connected to the logosynthesis basic procedure. So I ask you to imagine another person, and this time it's a person you don't really like. I hope that you're not so enlightened yet that you love everybody, but let's say I'm not at that point yet. So someone who is annoying, provoking, irritating, or challenging you. And don't take the most miserable people for this, just a person who, let's say, irritates you. And maybe you have processed it already, but just let's assume that was someone with whom you could improve the relationship. So now again, imagine that person being present in your room, in the space around you. Got it? now explore your perception of this person in the space around you. So where do you perceive the presence of that person in the space around you? At your left, at your right, below you, above you, behind you, in front of you, and how far away? My guess is that this person is a little bit farther away than the other one. And that's how we organize our world. So how do you perceive the presence of that person in your space? Do you see that person? Do you have an image? Do you hear that person? Do you have a voice? Or do you sense the presence of that person? In fact, again, the person you don't like is not really there. You perceive a sensory representation in space. You see, hear, sense, taste, or smell this representation. And again, the fact, this representation is a frozen energy pattern in your personal space. And maybe that's less nice compared to the first round of this experiment. So such a pattern, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, will trigger reactions in the form of emotions, thoughts, and physical sensations. Again, representations lead to reactions. And my guess, not surprising, the frozen energy pattern of this person will trigger different reactions from the first experiment. You will probably feel distress, discomfort, irritation, or anger. And my question is, how do you react to the presence of this person you feel challenged by, to say it mildly? So which thoughts, which emotions, which body sensations? And now, the third question, how distressful is the total of your physical, mental, and emotional reactions to the presence of this person on a scale 0 to 10? And make a note, or if you like, you can also share your answer in the chat so that I have an impression of where you are. So what's your distress level when you look at or hear this person? It's a 7 by with Raya, and you want a 7, a 3, a 10. Oh, that's a big one. 8. So Leslie is 7. Okay, I guess that the other people are also in this realm, so I think it can continue. And so now you're going to apply 3 sentences from the Logosynthesis basic procedure, and that will help you to restore the flow of energy in your representation and in your reaction. So then you can move the energy, your life energy, to the right place in you and the energy of others outside of your system. So I'm going to say 3 sentences, and the only thing you do is to just repeat them after me. Just say them aloud, softly, and then you let them sink in. You don't need to do anything. It's just trusting the power of words, and you're going to say the sentence, and it will work. You don't need any pathos or emphasis. You say the sentences, let them sink in, and you let the words do the work, as I said. So the first sentence, say it fast. I retrieve all my energy bound up in the representation of this person, and I take it to the right place in myself. Now repeat after me. I retrieve all my energy bound up in the representation of this person, and I take it to the right place in myself. And you let the words do the work. You don't need to rationalize, you don't need to think, you just observe what happens in your system. Now you move to the second sentence. I remove all non-me energy. You can repeat after me. I remove all non-me energy related to this representation of this person. From all my cells, all my body, and from my personal space, and I send it to wherever it truly belongs. And let it sink in, let the words do the work, observe. And here's sentence number 3. I retrieve all my energy. Repeat after me. Bound up in all my reactions to the representation of this person. And I take it to the right place in myself. And again, let the words do the work. Okay, now take a minute to explore what happened in this experiment. What showed up, what thoughts, physical sensations, emotions, shifts. And find out how high is yet the level of the stress, the total of your physical, mental, and emotional reactions to the presence of this person on a scale 0 to 10. Make a note again, compare with the first number. And what's the difference between your first and second score? And if you use the chat, please post both scores in the chat so that we can see the comparison. 7 to 0, 8 to 4, 7 to 4, 3 to 0, 7 to 2. Bend down to 5, tears. 7 to 4. Oh, 8 to 0. 7 to 2, Caroline. 8 to 2. I love this experience. It's always one of the first experiences that people have with logosynthesis, and they notice there is a difference. You can see it. You can do a t-test for paired observations or whatever. Statistically, it's always highly significant. Interesting. 5 to 2 is very. It's interesting. So this is why I discovered this a while ago, and it's still interesting even after 17 years. If you would want to know more about this, there will be a speakers breakout room after this. And Marie, can you tell you later, or Nick, how that works? Now I will continue because I have a few more things to do. I'll talk about the energy concept of logosynthesis and the model, trauma and fear, and then we'll have the demonstration. So what's the energy concept? It's very simple. We assume a subtle energy system, and this subtle, in this subtle energy system, there are two properties relevant. One is that your energy vibrates at different frequencies, from being frozen in patterns to flowing in connection with the greater whole. We talk about a lot these days. So what I call essence, you're connected to essence, you're frozen in patterns, and there is everything in between. And then the energy belongs either to a person or to their environment, with a boundary in between. So that's why I say in the sentences, I retrieve all my energy bound up in this perception, take it to the right place in myself. This perception always can be, let's say, contaminated with the energy of someone else. So I remove the energy of others, and then I take back the energy in the reactions. So that's the underlying idea. Energy vibrates at different frequencies. Energy belongs to a person or it doesn't. So we aim to raise the frequency of your life energy and to move it to the right place. And as a result, the distress caused by traumatic events will be lowered, and the distress because of disturbing emotions is reduced. You just saw that happening. This matches our other energy models. So this is not unique. When your energy is not flowing, it's bound up and trapped in frozen patterns, emotions, thoughts, memories, fantasies, beliefs, physical sensations, vows, promises, oath. Every, let's say, aspect of our existence can bind energy. And these frozen patterns cause trauma, fear, grief, rage, shame, guilt, loss of meaning, and a lack of confidence. They limit or block the free flow of your life energy. And if you assume there is this energy at different frequencies, you can raise the frequency of your life energy. That's the intention of our work. So that's the energy concept. A little bit more about the model. Logosynthesis is a comprehensive model for healing and development. So it doesn't stop with healing. It can also boost your development. There's one technique is called the bridge to eternity. When you have done your homework, you can move on and you can, let's say, keep on developing. I'm 72 years old now, and I haven't had a minute in which I didn't develop. And of course, that development has stalled every once in a while, and everybody who looks at this presentation will know that sensation. There are times in which everything seems to flow, and there are times in which things are very difficult to process. We had friends yesterday of whom a daughter has died last week. Let's say at that moment the world stops and everything becomes different. And then there is an opportunity for healing just by going through this experience. So the logosynthesis model is based on the power of words to change of or resolve energy patterns. It's as simple as that. It's the basic philosophy or the basic assumption. Words move energy. Words can change the frequency and field strength of energy patterns. So that's why we call it logosynthesis. This image really represents something is still frozen and you're going to move. That doesn't mean that it doesn't storm, but you're free to choose. Logo in this sentence means, this word means words. Syn is Greek for together. Thesis is everything that's brought or put. So we put together with words. And the model contains elements of psychoanalysis, psychosynthesis, logotherapy, hypnotherapy, NLP, gestalt therapy, everything Marie mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. And so it's a condensed model in the sense we're building, let's say, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to this development. That was Newton said, and that was also what Roger Callahan said. And more of these human experiments or experience is also rooted in age-old wisdom. So what I wrote about before as Aristotle, Zeno, Freud. And logosynthesis, the name is also a tribute to Viktor Frankl and Roberto Assagioli, who developed logotherapy and psychosynthesis. And they were among the first in psychotherapy who had a larger dimension when it comes to the meaning of life. So Viktor Frankl spent a lot of time in concentration camps and developed his logotherapy there. And it's about the meaning life has. Psychosynthesis, don't know if you're aware of the egg of Roberto Assagioli, otherwise I recommend you to look it up after this. It's a beautiful model in which there is a space for body, mind, and spirit. So logosynthesis is a modality of what I call guided change, coaching, counseling, psychotherapy, education. People guide other people. If you look at what we're doing in guided change, and I guess if you're looking at this slide, you're also, let's say, more or less active in this field as a guide or as a client. If you work with people, every form of guided change has a contact stage in which you build up a working alliance. You access information from the client, you ask, you make a contract of what you're going to work on. You might give information about how change works. Then you activate an experience and it's triggers, so it means you focus, you work through the experience and you process, and then you reassess and integrate the change. So what we did in the experiment was, in fact, say we have a positive learning alliance already because we've been in this, conference for a day. I ask information from you, so I ask you to think about an issue. You identify relevant issues for change, and you focus on the experience and its triggers. You work through the experience, and now I check with you, oh, it's an 8 to 2, 7 to 2, 8 to 0, and so there is a change. If you look at logosynthesis, we use specific words to activate the experience. So we talk about what's the issue, think about this unpleasant person, you focus on that, and then you work through the experience with the help of these very specific words and sentences. That's specific for logosynthesis. In The activation in EFT is pretty similar, and there you work through the experience, you process the experience with the help of tapping, or with John Deeple's holding position. But maybe also, if you work in psychoanalysis, you interpret what is activated. So every discipline has its own, let's say, processing mechanisms, and logosynthesis has words. So processing takes place by saying specific sentences that restore the flow, raise the frequency of life energy, and initiate change and growth. So it enables you to dissolve rigid energy patterns and thought forms, to clear your personal space, and to clear your boundaries, the boundaries of your personal space, and to manage these. So how do you do that? You retrieve your own energy from limiting and destructive patterns, move this energy to the right place in yourself. You remove the energy of others in these patterns from your body and your personal space, and that's a relief. Then you retrieve your energy locked in reactions to the pattern and move it to the right place in yourself. And this resolution of rigid limiting thought forms, energy patterns, allows you to focus your life energy, to activate your creative intention, and to achieve your life purpose. In logosynthesis, it's very important. Your life has a meaning, it has a purpose, it has a mission, you have a mission. And that's your real self, your free self, your living essence. So how does it work? And that's fantastic as a dynamic. If you look at how logosynthesis work, the mechanism is unusual in the world of guided change. It's the power of words. And the power of words is the oldest known power in the history of mankind. In spiritual traditions, the power of words is the origin of creation. Words and sentences have an active manifesting power beyond their content. It's not about thinking about, it's saying the words that activate a creative pattern. So divine words create, they focus the speaker's intention. So it starts with the Old Testament. So God spoke, let there be light, and there was light. He didn't do anything else. He just said these words, and these words created reality. The New Testament, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the divine words is what creates reality. The Quran is not much different. If Allah decides something, he just speaks there is, and it is there. And the manifesting power of words is not limited to the gods. We have curses and blessings as human beings. In every village here in Austria or near Austria, there is a person who can heal warts by just saying a formula. There is voodoo, there is hypnosis, the suggestion, autogenic training, which has come a little bit out of fashion, but we use it sometimes in therapy. And then there's this beautiful word called abracadabra, which means I create through speaking. Isn't this nice? So what we do is we apply the power of words with the help of specific sentences to restore the flow of your life energy. And you speak those sentences, and the power of words starts working immediately. And it's beyond reason. This is not your left frontal brain thinking something should happen and then it happens. It is beyond that. So here's the model. And I ask myself, I want to ask Caroline Marie, how much time do I have? Because probably I think it's better to have a demonstration now and talk about what happened afterwards than introduce more theory at this moment. Can I have some feedback?
I've got, Caroline's there, I've got 9 minutes, Willem.
9 minutes.
Yeah.
In that case, we don't have enough for a demo. So I will continue with the idea of logosynthesis with trauma and fear. And you can read my little ebook you get from this conference. And I also recommend that you look at my YouTube channel, The Origin of Logosynthesis, when it comes to, if you want to see how it works. We have videos in different languages, which might give a short overview how it works. So here we go. Trauma and fear. You can apply the logosynthesis-based procedure to neutralize frozen representations of the past and the future, because your past and your future only exist as energy patterns. It consists of expectations, fantasies, or it consists of memories. And your energy can freeze in such patterns, and then we have a trauma. So your energy can freeze in perceptions and fantasies, as well as in your reactions to them. Your energy can freeze in a painful past. The experiment you did, the second one, if you think about this, let's say, unpleasant person, probably this person has done something damaging in the past. This person may have shamed you, shunned you, rejected you, abandoned you. And that's a trauma. That's what we call disturbing memories. And logosynthesis is an excellent instrument to neutralize these disturbing memories. Energy can also freeze in a threatening future. And then there's fear or apprehension. And you might try to control that fear or to control your circumstances if you are confronted with this fantasy of a threatening future. I think we all are in a situation at this moment with the pandemic, with the war, with the climate change, that we fantasize about a threatening future. And logosynthesis might help you to manage those fantasies, because usually your fantasies don't imply that you are active, that your new resources are activated in a new time when new things happen. My wife and I were fantasizing yesterday what would happen if we didn't have an electric current for a while. And it was, let's say, not so pleasant, because I wouldn't able to do my work, what I'm doing now, online. We wouldn't have heating because we have a pump system which uses the groundwater. We couldn't charge the car. We couldn't cook. The laundry would not be washed. Just we don't have a freezer. So that can be a lot of stress.
Willem, you've got 5 minutes. 5 minutes remaining, my love.
Okay, thank you very much. Then you can free the energy bound up in perception and fantasies. Then your reaction patterns will be resolved too. So that's trauma and fear. More about trauma. Stored perception can contain everything you have seen, sensed, tasted, or smelled at a certain moment in time. Every memory is a combination of a stored perception and a stored reaction. So the perception in itself is neutral. It's something you see, hear, sense, whatever. It's the reaction that causes the problems. So trauma is a frozen reaction to frozen perceptions of threat or danger. In fact, trauma is a disturbance in your perception of time. A part of you doesn't know it's over. The past intrudes into your present, and that limits your spontaneity, your intimacy, your autonomy. Memories become disturbing if stressful experiences are not integrated, and stressful experiences are usually due to lack of protection or support, and the stress will continue. Stored perception of certain events are connected to frozen reactions, bodily sensations, emotions, thoughts, behaviors. And if an old perception is activated by events in the present, that same physical and emotional reaction is triggered. That's Pavlov. That's when the past intrudes into the present. What we do is disconnect perceptions and reactions in painful memories. To process a frozen memory, the memory must be reactivated, what I told you already before. It's not enough to think of the event. Your brain needs this feeling, just for a moment, how it felt. You must be in contact with the immediate experience. You don't need to stay in that, because we have the option, once you feel the pain or the distress, you can give the sentences and it will resolve. That's quite a difference to, let's say, psychoanalysis or client-centered therapy, where there's a lot of pain in the session. People cry less in my sessions than what anything else I learned before. The activation should be controlled. It should not lead to the client being flooded by the memory. We have a few minutes also for fear. Fear or phobia is a reaction to a frozen imagination. That's, of course, different from the survival reaction. If real danger is there, there's fear, and that fear leads to fight, flight, or freeze. In logosynthesis work, you resolve a fear by identifying the images of anything that can possibly happen. So people imagine a plane crash, a fall from a high place, or a disease, or COVID, the war, the climate crisis, illness and the death of relatives. So what image or what fantasy is leading to the fear?
Willem, you've got 1 minute remaining, my love.
And in that case, if you have found the trigger of the fear, you can neutralize it. And phobias are rooted in trauma. Okay, let's stop here. No demonstration. So here's the book. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Marie. And I'll
Could we thank you, Willem? Would you like to come out of screen? Oh, lovely. That's nice to see you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, Willem, that was amazing. And can I just express, I'm sure because there's a few EFTers here, and of course Jackie, that how interesting that, you know, I was on a 6, it dropped to 3, and I could feel it descending consistently. And because I used to tap it. So it was an interesting process. And I just wanted to share with you that on your on the sentence 2, I remove all non-me energy. And then at the end of sentence 3, at both occasions, I have what we use in EFT terms, like a shift or an energy, you know, like a sigh, like the energy moving. So for me, being used to that EFT, I thought, wow, something's happening here, because I would recognize that within the tapping. So it was phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah, it's exactly the same pattern. So you activate something, and
Yeah.
in EFT you do this. I know EFTers. I learned from Gary and John Diepold and the others. So this comes for me after EFT. And one of the reasons is that I am a lazy person, so I don't like muscle testing. I don't like all these tapping sequences. Let's say I'm a words person, so that's how I discovered this. And so the dynamics is exactly the same. The technique is different.
Yeah.
And I stopped tapping when after a few years after I discovered this, because it's so easy.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you.